Welcome to Political Trade Secrets, an inside look at campaigns and politics, where we pull back the curtain, look under the hood, and investigate all aspects of politics and how elections are won. Now, here's your host, Dustin Olson.
And welcome to Political Trade Secrets. I'm your host, Dustin Olson. It's great to have everybody showing up here from across the internet. We are live streaming on 12 different platforms across the internet. And wherever you are, that's perfect. We really do welcome you into our headquarters to talk about what it is to be a political leader in this country and how you can work to make a difference for your community, for your state, and for our country. And really what we're out to do is to empower citizens of this country to be the political leaders that their community needs, and also to help reignite American patriotism so that we can all be one nation under God together here. And so thank you for being a part of this. And we're really excited. We're going to be having a great show today. We're going to be having an old friend, Ben Higgins. Many years ago, we worked to help develop a television show around him possibly running for office, and we got to know him and got to know that he's a wonderful person. And we're going to be talking about his new book. We're going to be talking about what it's like to be living under the microscope in front of the camera, and what's that like, and what candidates, people who are seeking to be political leaders, can learn from somebody who has been in that environment, who has been in front of the camera, who has learned a lot of the skill sets that somebody who has been in entertainment and everything else that he's learned in his life. But before we get there, I'm going to bring in my co-host, Sean Bartley. Sean, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Good morning to you. Good morning to everyone out there. Really appreciate being here this morning.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day here in Washington, D.C. I know that Ben was on with a local broadcasting station here earlier this morning and talking about his new book, Alone in Plain Sight, and we're going to be hearing about that here shortly. But as people are coming in, we'd like to have people join the conversation. So whatever platform that you're on, I see people already saying good morning to you all. Thank you for joining the show today. I love the flag. I don't think that's the American flag, though. I think you may have gotten another country's flag for that one. So anyway, I appreciate the sentiment. So thank you for joining the show today. And anywhere you're on watching, please do post questions, comments, and join the conversation. And that way, it's you get to have your voice be heard, because that's what we're about here. By the way, Sean, just the other day, you led a free speech rally in Ohio, didn't you?
I did. It was great. Really appreciated the folks turning out to really make sure their voices were heard, and it's really just an extension of what we try to do here on this show. So. Which was very exciting to do, and really appreciated folks coming out. We probably picked the coldest day of the year to do it, but but it was great, and really appreciated folks turning out to really let folks know that they want to be heard, and that people have a right to have their opinions be heard, even if we don't agree with them. And so I thought that was a great sentiment, and it was great to see so many people give up a little bit of their Saturday to agree with that, and to have that be known in our little portion of the world. So.
Yes. Well, so we'll get the flag right on the next one. I just noticed the comment. Yes, sometimes it's hard to tell with all the little flag emojis. So thank you for joining, and thank you for everybody who's already making their comments known. And if you have questions for Ben, we'll be getting to that here in a moment. But before we do that, if you want to be in the know, if you want to know what's going on with Political Trade Secrets, if you want to get exclusive stuff, join us at politicaltradesecrets.com to be a Political Trade Secrets insider. As we are in this time where, you never know, Periscope's shutting down in 2 months. Parler's been shut down for the last few weeks. You just never know if from one day to the next, Facebook disappeared us 2 weeks ago for 24 hours. You just never know what's going to happen. So go to politicaltradesecrets.com and sign up, and that way we can always be able to freely assemble, be able to freely speak, and be able to communicate so that we can empower each other as we seek to reignite American patriotism. And with that, I know some of you have joined our share force, and we do appreciate it. So with that, if you would like to join the share force, go to politicaltradesecrets.com, sign up, and we'll be providing you some extra stuff by doing so. But today, feel free to share this episode on whatever platform that you're watching on, and we really do appreciate that. Now, Sean, we have to pay the bills, and it's what allows us to be here. So if you wouldn't mind telling people about our sponsors.
Look, are you thinking about running for office or what it takes to be a powerful political leader in your neck of the woods? Reach out to us. It's olsonstrategies.com, OLSON strategies.com. You can email me, Sean, SEAN, at olsonstrategies.com, or Dustin at olsonstrategies.com, and we can set up that conversation today. We're also proud to be sponsored by Grassfire. What does Grassfire do? It's all of the one-on-one, human-to-human interactions, canvassing, petitioning, live calling, over the phone, in front of the grocery store, or on the doorstep. It's www.grassfire.us, the best in the business at that. They also fuel 10centtexting.com. Look, 82% of people open every text message they get. It's your job to make sure that it actually has an impact. That is something that 10 Cent Texting does better than anybody else in the business. They literally wrote the book on it. Go download that free gift to you today at 10centtexting.com and start communicating with your constituents, your voters, right away. That's
awesome.
10centtexting.com.
Well, thank you. And that 8 pro tips for political texting is an excellent resource, and anybody who uses it, it's going to make a difference. Highly recommend it. So with that, we are also, I know a lot of you have asked how you can be involved, and maybe you don't have a lot of time to volunteer. You can go to winred.com. The Republican Party for the last 180 years has been a part of every great expansion of what it is to be a human being, from ending slavery to women's suffrage to the civil rights movement to this day, expanding your freedom of thought and speech. So you can go there, you can see all the races that are happening. There's a big map of the country. You can check things out, learn more about the different races, and be able to donate, do whatever you would like to do to be able to support those candidates that you see fit to support. So we want to encourage people to do that and be active in our democracy. So with that, I'm looking forward to this conversation. We've really enjoyed getting to know Ben over the years, and I'm really excited about his book. I started reading it in the last day or so, and it just came out in the last week, and he's doing a book tour. I imagine it's a grueling process to do that, so we're going to find out about that as well. Yeah. But I really am impressed by the book already, in that he's really taking on an important topic at this time. In the last year, we've been in this pandemic, and people have been separated, and it's really about this. I will get his thoughts on it, but what I'm getting from it is that people who experience this being disconnected from other people, and tackling that, I think, is really really on point at this time. So I'm looking forward to hearing about that. Also, one of the things I noticed when we did a little bit of work with him a couple of years ago is that he is really comfortable being on camera. And that's something that very few people who run for office are ready for. So I'm looking forward to hearing his thoughts on those sorts of things. What are you looking forward to in this conversation?
Well, some of the things you already mentioned, and one of the things I really liked in the book was the focus on being authentic and authenticity. And, that's something we talk about a lot on this program. And that's why it was just a natural fit to being able to have that conversation today. And I think it's something that'll really be beneficial for our listeners out there.
Awesome. Well, very good. Well, just to kind of tease this, people may not realize this, that people know him from The Bachelor. They know him from when he was on The Bachelorette. He's been involved with The Bachelor Nation. However, he has a whole nother life outside of that. and he is I would consider him a philanthropist. He works with many nonprofits, and really he has a heart for helping people. And his company, Generous Coffee, is actually focused on that. So as I said in the tease today, that he's a coffee mogul now as well, and he's an author. So many different experiences that he's going to be able to share with us. So with that, we will move on with the show. Ben Higgins, welcome to the show.
Hey friends, how's it going, guys?
Doing well.
Great.
Glad to have you on.
Man, it's good to be here.
Yeah, and you're in Denver right now, is that correct?
Yeah, I am. I'm in Denver. Been here 8 years. Hanging out in the house right now, and blocked off the whole morning to talk to you guys. So just sitting back, relaxing, having a cup of coffee.
That's awesome. Well, likewise, I've got my coffee here as well, and everybody at home, enjoy your coffee along with us. And I'm guessing it's your own coffee that you have that you provide to people.
Yeah, it's Generous Coffee. So this is about the same time that we were all working together, and we've been through a lot together. I think that's one thing. I don't know how much you've shared that, but you guys were steadfast and rocks for me during probably one of the most confusing and tumultuous times in my I guess new chapter of life post Bachelor. And then we started Generous Coffee, as you just mentioned, with the idea that we could donate 100% of the profits back to nonprofits and social causes. It's been really great. It's been 3 years now, and so yes, I am drinking Generous.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I was just talking to a friend last night when we let people know that you're going to be on today. And one of the first messages that I got from someone is that they had just purchased some of your coffee and they were enjoying it. And it seems, so I actually would like to talk about that, because most people are thinking about The Bachelor, but you really have taken what you were able to be given in that platform, and you're taking it into other realms, and you're building a business off of it. And Generous Coffee isn't just about making money, it's about making a difference, right? So tell us about how that idea came about.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's a long story, but in short, about 11 years ago, my buddy started a nonprofit called Humanity and Hope United, and it's focused in Central America. And the idea was that we would go into these communities, not tell them what they need, but ask them, what do they need? What do they want? What do they dream of? And then we would work alongside them and help with our resources and take their resources and actually kind of help them get there. I think with there's not a great word to wrap around it, but I think the best way to do it would be like a consulting relationship, where we would sit alongside them in partnership and be with them forever. Well, I think the popular word for that is sustainable change. We want to create sustainable change in these communities. Well, in order to have sustainable change and strategize 5-10 years out, you need a strategic fundraising plan. We could no longer just kind of hope that the next year would be as good as the year before. You don't know what's going to happen. A pandemic obviously changes people's cash flow and their cash reserves to be able to donate back. That changes things. So we wanted to come up with a sustainable fundraising plan. We wanted to do that by utilizing kind of some of the skills that we had already had, which was within business. So we started Generous with the idea that we could sell for-purpose products. So coffee that's sustainably sourced, apparel that is environmentally friendly and sustainably sourced, handbags made from single mothers in the Dominican Republic. We could put it on one marketplace, which is Generous. We would sell that, and then 100% of the profits could be donated back to nonprofits that are human-focused and building sustainable change around the world. So in order to do that, we had to all the owners signed off that on the value of the company or on the sale of each product, everything would be donated. Obviously, we do have to pay salaries, but outside of that, everything is donated. There is nothing left to be there. And so it's a really fascinating project. It's been a really cool experience to kind of see how that story's unfolded. And 3 years in, last year we were able to donate $30,000. We're a 3-year-old company. I think that's a big deal. Yeah. And definitely something to celebrate.
Well, that is pretty cool. And I'm guessing it's taking to some really interesting parts of the world.
Yes, definitely. Some of the places in the world that are probably I would define them as most forgotten Which, you know, when you feel forgotten. I host a show called Hope Still Wins, and I had a really interesting conversation once about this idea. And they were talking, the guest was talking about, you know, if you've never felt hope or if you felt forgotten, that's kind of intrinsically within your like mindset and your emotion. So it's a lot of times just getting in there and allowing people to know that they're not forgotten, that they now have friends in us or in others. And that's usually the hardest step, is just to get people like believing in themselves again, or believing that there could be a brighter and better future. So yes, those places of the world exist. They're all over. And, you know, we try to get to as many of them as possible.
Tell us a story of what is there a moment when it really hit you when you were traveling, you were there, you're talking to somebody? Share a story about some really important moment where it really, you got how much Generous Coffee can make a difference for folks.
Yeah, two stories I'll share. One's really recent, and I think it's very relatable. And then the second is, it's probably been 6 years now. So one of our communities in Honduras it's 100-year-old ag community that had been completely forgotten because the palm companies had kind of left. And so they were left without jobs, but yet they still sit in the middle of these palm fields, hundreds of miles of palm fields. And one of the things they were lacking was clean water, which isn't uncommon. But their water source was the same river that their sewage dumped into. So they're, you know, going down river and picking up. Everybody was very sick, and they'd been sick their whole lives. So with the mutual help between them, they actually had purchased, this community, a water well that we implemented and put in. So they were paying for access to this water well. So they had empowerment and ownership in that water well. They wanted to take care of it. I went down about a month, let's say 2 months after the water well went in. And I was sitting with a friend of mine who lives in the community, and I'd known her for years. At that point, probably 5 years. She was my age, and she had 3 kids at that point. And so she'd been about 26 years old. And I sat with her. I was like, what, you know, we were kind of celebrating this water well. I said, what is the best part about having clean water? And she looked at me, and this is the moment, I think this is a pivotal point in my life where my life changed, was she said, for the first time in my life, I've woken up without a stomach ache.
Wow.
Which is like it, which, you know, as you hear it, like we hear stomach ache, and we're like, yeah, you take Tums or whatever, you get over it. But like when you deal with a stomach ache for 25, 26 years of your life every morning, when you have diarrhea, when you have the pains of whatever that issue is, you're not going to be able to be your best self. You're not going to be able to be your best mother. You're going to be always like feeling down and out. And so that's something that hit me, is just the access to clean water, something that we, you know. The second one is recent. 2 of our communities in Honduras got hit by stage 5 hurricanes back to back within 3 days of each other. Actually, just about, I don't know the exact day. I'm going to say 2 months ago. It feels like 2 months. It could have been 4. I don't know at this point. But you know, these, you know, the big hurricanes that hit Central America and hit some of those islands out there, they hit the same community twice. Well, this one community that we have had just gotten electricity for the first time ever. And so these people have gone out. There's new small businesses popping up in this community. So they've gone out, they'd used their money to purchase refrigeration systems for the homes and for the community center. The hurricane hits and it wipes out, and it washes all of these refrigerators, all electricity downriver. They're gone. They're ruined. They're over. Well, the one thing that happens in Honduras and most of Central America is there's no insurance. And so this community that, you know, is making $12 a day at best, who is purchasing refrigeration systems on loan, now lost them, and they don't have insurance to pay it back. And so that feeling, I'm supposed to go down there in 2 weeks, but that feeling of just once again kind of getting kicked while you're down, or like kind of that like pinnacle moment where you're so excited, you have electricity for the first time ever, everybody's celebrating, there's a big, you know, party around it, and then it gets wiped out within a month of getting it, and everything that you've ever owned is now gone. I don't know the emotion around that yet. I haven't been there.
Yeah.
But those are 2 moments that kind of stick out to me as there's work still need to be done, but you know, it helps keep things into perspective.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And the audience really appreciates it. I'm going to mention a comment from Crystal. so heartbreaking, the environment these people live in. Thank you, Ben, for all the wonderful strides you have taken to make the world a better place, and thank you for that. And another one, wonderful work, Ben. People really do appreciate it. Sean, go ahead. I think you have something.
Yeah, so just on that, you talked about some of the products that are available. What have you gotten out of being able to put to work some folks that that otherwise wouldn't have a way to make a living?
I mean, there's so much to that, right? It's interesting. There's a story that happened 3 years ago. I'll call it adopting a new community. It's when we go into partnership and we agree to be there for as long as we need to work beside them. And what we do on those first initial visits, we sit down with their community leaders. We kind of right away develop a leadership plan. And so one of those is actually voting in who is going to lead that community, and then who is going to be the treasurer of that community, who's going to be the leadership group that can kind of speak on behalf of the community to us, because there's 400 people in this community. It's hard to, you want to have a designated voice. And we sat down with them. We said, okay, what do you need? What do you want? What do you dream of? In our minds, clean water was number one. We just thought, yes, we're going to do clean water. So we proposed this plan to them on how we were going to get clean water in there in months. And they said, no, we need jobs for women. We said, that doesn't make sense. You need clean water. They said, we need jobs for women. That's what we want most. None of the women in our community have access to jobs. We need equality in the household. We need more revenue streams in the household. We need these women having this purpose. And so we said, well, we're not going to venture off of what we said our vision and mission was for these communities. So we'll listen to you. So we implemented we actually started 2 chicken coops. And these chicken coops within 6 months became a profitable small business led by the women in these communities. And so then we saw what they were talking about is now the men and women are working together. Now all of a sudden there's things to celebrate. Now all of a sudden they have a small business that's bringing in a revenue and profit into their community that is far beyond what we could have paid as salaries, or just would have, they wouldn't have afforded clean water. Again, they pay for the access to clean water. They've never afforded it. And so then clean water is the second step.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that I've learned, to go back on your question, is you've got to listen. And that's part of what I'll talk about here in a bit. I know we're going to get into some communication strategy, but listening and kind of taking away your preemptive thought is important. And it's taught us a lot. And it's typically made a lot of sense when you look back on it. And so that's one huge takeaway for me personally.
That's great. What I'm struck by is that if you had just come in and given the water, they couldn't get it for themselves, and you gave them the opportunity to actually create it for themselves. They actually got to be the ones who brought it about.
Well, I mean, for hundreds of years, the missional strategy has been to go and give, and it's never worked. In fact, it's typically left people in a worse place than where they found them, because there is no empowerment. They recognize that it's being given typically by people from the U.S. And so then when you leave and there's not some sustainable relationship there, typically you'll go back to these water wells and they'll be dried out, empty, and not taken care of because there is no ownership in them. And I think that's something important that's a note that we recognized early on when we went with another organization. Was we go back year after year after year, and they'd be almost in a worse place than we found them. They'd still be begging for food, and they wouldn't have clean water, and we'd be confused on why they weren't taking care of the things that were given to them. But when you go down and you say, no, we're in this together. Let's figure out a strategy. It might not be as fast as what we could do if we just got a bunch of donors to donate a bunch of money. We went down there and just took it clean. What it also does, though, is it continues to actually enhance the culture. These Honduran communities are still recognizable for what they love and what they know and what they do best, even after they get access to schooling and access to water and food. And it's something really important. I think that is something that's just been tangibly true over the years. And it's, we're 11 years in, and that strategy has still worked, where it's not just we're not going down to be the saviors. at all.
It's as if you're creating a partnership with
Definitely.
with these people, and you're giving them ownership, as you said. It's really a powerful idea. Honestly, it's something that I think a political leader in this country could take to any community, is to give them ownership as opposed to a handout, hand up, and helping people to actually create for their own community and to own it and be responsible for it, and it's going to get cared for better. It's a really powerful idea, and I hope other people are taking this and they're running with this idea also.
Yeah, and we talk about here the something for a leader to be is empowering, and that's something I really hear in that. And so, is that one of the things that you've seen since really transitioning to this new these new things that you're doing in life, in being a leader? What have you found have been the qualities that are most important as you're taking on these new ventures?
Yeah, I'll answer that question in two parts, because when you use the word empowering, I think there's a different lane to look at than it would be to be a leader when it comes to communication, or how it's a leader that can attract a following or be authentic, as you mentioned earlier. When it comes to empowerment, one thing I've recognized and it's been a lot through this work in Central America or in Africa, around the world, is you've got to be a leader that kind of comes behind. You've got to be a leader that in my opinion, it needs to be focused on others. It's one thing I've learned since the show. My buddy, I got off the show, and right away, you're old news. They announced a new person right away. You're kind of forgotten. And I called him and I said, I'm not ready for this. Like, I was just getting used to the attention. I was just getting used to having people talk about me. And he gave me some advice that I've kept with me forever. He goes, what if this has never been about you? Can you do this whole thing? Can you use the platform that you've been given? Can you use the resources and the skills that you've learned over the last years for something greater than yourself? And I think that's what empowerment actually does. It does that for the leader, because what I get to do now by coming behind people is I get to be involved in their stories. I get to be involved in some cool stories that I would never be able to create on my own, that I would never be able to cultivate on my own. The second part of that is then I could leave. It's not dependent on me. I can leave and they're going to still move forward. They're going to still be who they've always been and who they've been building to become. And I think that's what empowerment is, right? It's giving people in all parts of the world, at every place, the opportunity and the ability to thrive and to fight the injustices that they've been placed on them, or that they've been handed over the last hundreds of years. And so that's when I think of empowerment. I think that's the big thing is to break that down one last time. It would be about coming behind them and doing it not based on yourself, but based on others.
Yeah. Well, I got from what you're saying is that you're planting a seed with somebody else, that whatever's possible out of whatever you saw was possible, they now own it. They now can be responsible for it, and they can carry it into the future. And you're no longer the linchpin.
Definitely.
That it's something that's bigger than any one person, that someone else can now take the ball and run with it, which is a pretty powerful idea. It allows for expansion and growth if you approach it that way.
I do believe that, yes, because things happen in life where things do get taken away. It happens all the time where maybe a leader falls short. Maybe they make a mistake and they have some healing and work to do on themselves, and they have to walk away from something for a bit. You don't want that to be dependent on one person. You don't want that necessarily to be dependent on one group. You want this to be a community. You want this to be a place that is united on the idea and what the dreams are of what things can be. And you said something, Dustin, that's interesting. You said, that what this does is this is an empowerment, and this is a mission that we've all entered into together. Yeah. Again, this is an idea that we've all agreed upon, that we've seen the tangible impact of what this dream can become and what it's already become. And so as a result, we're all working towards it. And it's that missional focus of keeping the focus now in line to what we've said we're going to do, how it's working along the way. Yes, it's going to take a long time, and there's going to be small steps. There's going to be setbacks along the way, but can we get to a place that we've all agreed upon something and we can continue to work on it far beyond my lifetime, far beyond my legacy?
That's awesome. Well, I know that there's folks who want to hear about how all this came about. Yeah. And for my part, I remember when I got a call from one of the producers from The Bachelor, and I was told that there was somebody that I would know that was on all the magazines, and I assumed it was Peyton Manning. Actually, I don't know if I ever told you. They said somebody really famous.
Man, hey, I'm plugging in my computer as you give this intro. My computer's about ready to die. This is live, so sorry about that.
That's perfect. And as you do that, there's a couple of comments that people made. Ben, you're so sweet. And then empowerment is most important. If you do not feel purpose, then you truly can quit feeling. So those are really good comments. So when I first found out about you, it was when the producers called and they said that somebody who's very famous and on all the magazine covers. I assumed it was Peyton Manning. But I found out that it was you, and I found out your story, that you're from Indiana originally, and that you were interested in running for office, which is already just like with the book. And so as we start to talk about The Bachelor and we talk about the book, I want to bring in stories and insights that you have from having written the book, which is an amazing thing for anybody to do, and just the clarifying nature of writing a book and clarifying your thoughts. But, when we first were introduced to you, it wasn't that, oh, you're just going to go do what a bachelor from the show typically does. You actually wanted to do something totally different, which was the idea of running for office and having a show that followed you running for office. That ultimately didn't end up happening. However, it was a fascinating experience for us to watch the kind of the sausage making of a reality TV show. But I know that you had your own introduction to that. And how did that happen? I'm sure people have heard the story before, but just for our audience, how did you even get pulled into all of this?
Yeah, there's so much to the story. And if we sat here for 4 hours, I think the three of us could probably talk about that season of life for the show that we were creating around my run for office.
Yeah.
What a wild time. What a weird time.
Yep.
And again, as I said at the beginning, we were able to keep a good relationship through it because I think we all had agreed to do that. But I don't think it would have been easy. But I got into the Bachelor world because I was single. I was new to Denver, came right from Indiana to Denver. I didn't have any friends out here. I wasn't dating. And a lady at my office had said, I love this show. And I watched the show off and on throughout the years. Ben, I think you should go on the show. And it hit me, wow, like people that are working in a cubicle in a basement go on The Bachelor. I didn't ever make that connection. And she goes, if I sign you up and they call you, would you do it? And I said, yeah, I need a shakeup in life. Mm-hmm. I'm not very happy where I'm at. And I don't know if this is like my future is sitting at this job. I wasn't very good at the job. I was writing user manuals for a software company. I wasn't good at it. And I don't think I would have kept the job very much longer because I wasn't good at it. But she said, if I sign you up, would you go? And they called. And I said, yes, without a lot of expectation or really knowledge of what it was and what it would be. And it's interesting. I think this will tie into later on in our conversation, but you go on the show, you show up to Los Angeles, you're in a hotel for a few days, kind of getting everything prepped, and they're doing their stuff with you. And then before you know it, a limo shows up to the hotel. You get in it, you drive this mansion, you get out, and there's 200 people like filming you, audio, visual, producers, all this stuff. And you literally step out of the limo and you look around and all of a sudden the lights are on. Like, mm-hmm. And I had no training at being on camera. And so that's an interesting step, but that's really how it happened. There's no like really cool story to that. It's just lady signed me up, they called, I went on.
Well, I think that in and of itself is pretty interesting that just one of the ladies from the office is like, you have to be on the show, and they did the signing up of you.
Yeah, it is interesting because I think people want to just see my buddies before I left were like, we'll see you in a couple weeks. I don't think they thought like this would go very well for me. But it did, and it went well. And then I became the Bachelor, just based on kind of, I guess, my time on the Bachelorette. And that's a whole new beast in itself. It's completely different. Now you are the focus of attention. You are the focus of stories. It is, in a sense, like, your season of The Bachelor. And again, I was 26. I just had turned 26. I wasn't used to this. I wasn't ready for it, or prepped and prepared. But then you have all of the opinion of the outside world now on you. And that's kind of, and again, where we're talking about later, and where the book started to come in, is all of a sudden I go from being in a cubicle 6 months later on The Bachelor. My picture's on the side of a building in Times Square. Everybody has an opinion about you. You're not prepped for it. You don't have any callous on your soul or heart or emotion to take in the criticism, but also the praise that comes with that. So that happened. The next chapter was, then I ended up engaged from the show to a terrific person who's now married with a kid on the way, who I still have a lot of respect for. Our relationship didn't work out. That's fine. That happens. But we, after the show, and in all transparency, I had mentioned many times during the show that I would want to get into the political sphere at some level. I had already been working with Humane and Hope United. I wanted to take the lessons learned from that, and I thought I could kind of put it into my run in office and my time in service. And I just had talked about it on the show, like, yeah, one day's a dream. Well, then after the show, after I get off The Bachelor, they call and they say, how about you do it now? I was like, that was not my plan. I was not ready for that. But I thought, what better time to do it now, right? Like I'm relevant. I have a show backing it. I know they're going to make sure that the team around me is the most talented team available, which was you guys. And I guess yes. I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if it fits my life, but like, I'll do it and I'll commit to it. And that's how that show happened. Now, obviously, it got switched and that part never aired, and that part kind of just like got pushed aside after a while. But it was kind of the path into that. It wasn't something that I necessarily was prepped for, planned for, necessarily even wanted at that stage of my life. But I knew that, hey, I had these skills that I was going to take with me. Why not now?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we were, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we were not surprised by, but it was very evident, is you were, at that point, you've been on 2 shows. You were very comfortable being in front of the camera. And if you weren't comfortable, it wasn't obvious that you weren't comfortable. And it seemed like you had developed a number of skills. Also, you were definitely interesting. It was a wild time. You were running in a very, very, very solidly blue district, and we had to do some wrangling to even get you on the ballot to make all that happen. And it was just the whole process was pretty wild. And we made it there, and then the show changed, which I assume probably happens all the time in Hollywood, and it ended up not being about you running for office. It was a fascinating experience for us, for sure, and we really enjoyed working with you. What's that?
I said, I'm glad it was fascinating for you. It was frustrating for me.
Yeah. Well, I will say that the frustration was definitely present at the time, and maybe I look at it differently here 4 years later. It doesn't have the same kind of frustration as it did at the time. So I just think that it's interesting that, just like the book, you could have just done a tell-all book, but instead you want to do a book that's actually dealing with something that people are dealing with in their lives right now. And you could have done just some kind of spin-off, but you intended to do something that actually mattered. It seems like there's a theme there that that's common through all of these. And we have a few questions from the audience we'll get to in a moment. But just let you guys know that we do see those. But as I notice this, I just noticed you always tend to want to do something that's more than just, the typical thing people would do.
Yeah. Well, again, and not to continue to go back on it, but one, I don't want to be the Bachelor forever. Selfishly, if I focus on myself for a second, I don't want to be 60 years old and somebody goes, yeah, he was the Bachelor when he was 26. And that's what his defining moment in his life was. That's selfish. I just don't want that for my legacy, I guess. The second part is I personally want to be involved in human stories. I think I get the most value, joy, purpose out of that. And so I've been handed this platform, given it for no really reason. I don't have a skill set that brought me on the show, but I was handed it. And now that I have this gift available to me, the question then was, what are you going to do with it? In fact, the host of the show sat me down once and he said, Ben, use this show not to change your life completely, but to enhance your life in every way that you could dream possible. And so if I had a dream to be involved in human stories, if I had a dream to be involved in something greater than the show, then now is the time to do that. Because I don't know how much longer I'll have where this platform will be given to me. I don't know where social media goes from here. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons. The second is there's a piece of my legacy that I believe can be built by just surrounding myself with great people and trying to speak on behalf of great people. So yes, I do. You're spot on. I don't want to do a tell-all book. I don't know how many books I'll be given the opportunity to write in my life. I'd rather write something that I can be proud of, something that I think can hopefully relate with others. One of the things that happens when you do involve yourself in the stories of others, you hear the pains of others often, the struggles. Right now, the chaos and the confusion of others, no matter where you stand or where you live, there's just a lot of like heaviness, it feels like. Yeah. And so Alone in Plain Sight was a response to that, to say you might feel that way and that's okay. But now how are you going to navigate that? Because here's the one thing that I've always believed in. I believe people matter. In fact, at Generous, our tagline to the team that I manage is, we have a lot of work to do in this world. There's a lot of injustice in this world. But if one person's life is changed for the better because of the work that we're doing, then we got to believe this whole thing's been worth it. Now, I hope there's more than one, and I believe there has been. But that's how much we value the human life. That's how much we value people. And so Alone in Plain Sight is a part of that is, hey, if one person picks this up, they read it and they go, I'm not alone. I can't think of a worse feeling than lonely. I'm not alone. I'm in this. I have a value, I have a purpose. Then this whole thing's been worth it. And that's really what I want. Yes, it would have been easy to write a tell-all book and sell a bunch more books than probably I'm going to sell with Alone in Plain Sight. But I don't know if that would be fulfilling. And I don't know, again, if that was something I'd be proud of 10 years from now.
Yeah. Well, I have a sense just by what I've been able to consume of the book that this has more legs than a typical. A tell-all book is on the stands for a couple of weeks. This actually has some real meat to it and actually can be of service to people. So with that in mind, I think this is the kind of thing that actually sticks around for a while because it's actually about something.
I hope so, man. I really do.
And what inspired you to write the book or a book, and then particularly Alone in Plain Sight?
Well, so kind of going back on that first feeling of, you get off the show, I go from being feeling pretty not really having identity when I first moved to Denver to going on this show, then being kind of handed this identity. I think I know the tagline of my season was the perfect Ben. Yet internally, and really anybody around me kind of laughed and scoffed at that. Like, that's not true. That's
so unfair to put on anybody.
Yeah, it's an expectation that I was going to fall short of. In fact, I think most of the criticism I got was based on that tagline saying, what are you talking about? No, he's boring. No, he's not this. He's not this. It's like, well, of course, I'm not perfect. But that was the tagline that everybody expected me to live up to. Mm-hmm. And so the show gets done and it put me in a really dark place because I was really kind of thriving on this new attention that I had never gotten in my life. And through some work with some professionals and some counseling, also a lot of times alone, I started writing my thoughts. Like, today I'm feeling this way and this is why. Or today I heard this story and this affected the way I see myself or I see others or how I'm dealing with God. Today I have a lot of doubts about God. I'm wrestling with God. I don't get it. I don't know where God is at in this. I'm confused by this. I started writing this stuff down just for my own benefit. And then HarperCollins, Thomas Nelson Publishers came to me one day when I was speaking at an event in Atlanta. And they said, would you ever want to write a book? And I said, I would. I don't know what I'd write about. And so we kind of went through the process of that. And I had already said, I'm not writing a tell-all. It's not going to be my thing. I don't have a lot to tell. A lot of the stuff that was shown on television is how it was shown. I don't have a lot of secrets there. So I don't know what I'd write about. I'd have to make up stuff. And so we started talking about what I'm doing in my free time. I said, well, I have this journal. And they said, that's it. If you can, write about your life, write about the lives of others, write about the stories that have affected you the most. And that's where Alone in Plain Sight came from. And at that point in time, it kind of became this idea in my mind of what the book could be, but it changed as the course of me writing it, because one of the things that I recognized, and people could argue with me about this, and that's fine. I actually have enjoyed that. But one of the things I recognized is that I was trying to find our connecting point as humans. What connects us, right? What's one thing we all have in common? No matter, again, what your belief system is at any level. One of those things is obviously death. Like, we're all going to die. And so that's a scary thought, but it's a true thought. The second part of that is we all have shared pains and sufferings in our life at some level, right? Big, small, whatever. We all have shared pains and sufferings. That's a connecting point for us. And so that's where the book started to get formed from, is like, if shared pains and suffering is our connecting point, what do we do within that pain and that suffering? What is pain? How do we process it? And that's kind of where the book started to get its identity.
Awesome.
Well, I mean, I really want to acknowledge you for stepping out and writing about that, and taking something, personal, like, from your own journals and whatnot, to really be the inspiration for that. I think that's something that's helpful for really anybody that whatever might be going on in their own life, to really see some of that in others is a real benefit.
Yeah, it's one thing I didn't expect when I started, though, was like, in order to start talking and sharing this stuff, I was gonna have to get vulnerable myself. Yeah. And so, you'll see on the cover, Mark Tabb is on there. Mark's a great guy from Indiana, and he came in about halfway through because I had hit a wall emotionally. I could no longer pull out the stories that I wanted. I could no longer pull out the stories of others. And so I had to have a sidekick to ask the right questions, to help guide me through it, to continue to push me to share more and more and more. Because if ultimately this was going to be a book that didn't fall short, it was going to have to be a book that exposed everything about me, which is a really hard thing to do. Mm-hmm. And so I did have to get help in that process, which I think is another good lesson to learn, is in order to get to that place of pure authenticity and vulnerability, you might need to get some help along the way.
As you talk about that process as political consultants, that's basically what we do. We are the mark in that scenario. We mm-hmm. come in and because the truth is, most candidates aren't quite ready for it. One of the questions we have from the audience is, how did you deal with the loss of personal privacy? Which with the book, you're even leaning into even more with that vulnerability. And I find for candidates and people who want to put themselves into the public square, there is a vulnerability there. You're putting yourself out there to be judged up or down. It takes something to do that. And you were willing to go pretty far in putting this book together. But we get to be it's Mark Tabb, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we get to be that role for candidates to help pull the stories out, to get to the core of what is true about that person. Like, what is it that they are about? And that sounds like that's what you've gotten to the core of.
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's still one that I would like to say I'm 5 years in now. I consistently still deal with the loss of privacy.
Yeah.
It's a lot less than it was right after the show, right? I'm not in the headlines every day, and I'm not getting scrutinized in the way maybe I once was, or getting praised in the way I once was. Mm-hmm. And that's its own thing to kind of get out of, right? Like, that's its own thing to deal with, is when you're no longer the spotlight anymore. But it's still something I consistently deal with, especially the criticism. The praise doesn't sit in as much because I know the criticism's following it. Now, it's interesting, though. Yesterday I was having a conversation about, and trust me, as a Colts fan, this guy was never my favorite, Tom Brady. Nobody can argue right now that Tom Brady is the best quarterback that we've ever seen play the game of football, or the best winner. You can argue on his tangible talents, but the best winner we've ever seen in football. It's just not the case. And I don't want to say that. Like, as a Colts fan, I don't like saying that. However, it's interesting. The more successful Tom gets, the more he wins, the more his enemies criticize him, the more the people speak out against him. And even somebody wants to speak out against him as well. I can't right now. He just won with a new team and a new program, new offense. And I think I think that's a good lesson for us all to keep into perspective, is as you put yourself out there, as you become an impact maker, as you try to pursue whatever dreams it is you've had in life, criticism is going to come. In fact, I talked to the Bachelor right now. His name's Matt James. He's the first Black Bachelor the Bachelor franchise has ever had. I talked to him before the show started. And I said, Matt, you're going to be great at this. He's a good dude. He's a solid guy. I said, you're going to be great at this, but you're going to get criticized. Like, I don't care how well you do at this thing. You're going to get criticized, and it's going to hurt, and it's going to sting. And you're going to be confused, and you're going to be laying in bed at night. And sometimes the criticism is going to hurt worse than other times. But also, you have to process that criticism. It's not all bad. In fact, some of the criticism that was given to me is really good. It helped me become a better man. It helped me keep myself accountable. It helped me continue to kind of process through who it is that I wanted to be, who it is that I said I was, and what exactly I was doing to get there.
What's an example of one of those?
What's that?
What's an example of one of those criticisms that helped build you up?
I think, well, you go back to the show, and that's different. They can call you boring. I don't know if I could change that. Like, I don't know how much more exciting I could make my life. I feel like it's pretty exciting. I'm typically pretty tired at night. I don't want to do anything else. I think honestly, when I ran for office and it was kind of starting to get written about, that criticism came in pretty quickly. And I think a lot of that was, what is my intention in doing this? Yeah. Is this about me? Like, is this about something that I want to have my name as X, Y, or Z? Or is this about really the impact or what I thought I could do with this elected title? And I think those are the things that kept me accountable, is continue to process through the lens of what is my intention in pursuing the things that I'm out to do. That criticism, because, people are going to call you selfish. People are going to call you narcissistic. People are going to call you XY, power hungry, XYZ. And it's like, okay, now's a good moment for me to check myself. Am I, or am I not?
Yeah, it's worth looking at it. A couple of the questions we have coming up are all around what a person who's putting themselves out there to run for office. So I'll go to the specific question, because just the being able to deal with criticism, if you put yourself out there, you're going to be criticized. Yeah. Even if you don't put yourself out there, someone's criticizing you, someone's judging you. It's just going to happen. So this is the question from Alexandria. What advice can you give those of us preparing to run for office on how to deal with speaking to the media? Thank you so much. So as you're in The Bachelor and you're doing a lot of media interviews, right now you're doing a book tour across the country. You're doing a lot of media interviews. I assume you've developed a lot of skill sets. Let's talk about this one.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. And I actually I figured, based on how the intro went, that was something that we were going to be talking about. And so I wrote down a few thoughts here. So I'm going to be looking at a piece of paper. But one of the things is, before you begin, and this is just something that I do in life, is before you begin your media time or your gauntlet of attention that's about to be placed on you, pray through that. And you can call it contemplate, meditate. I'll call it pray through that, meaning sit down in quiet and think through the topics that you're going to be speaking on, and why it is you're voicing the opinion that you're voicing, or why it is that you're saying the thing you're saying. What is it that you want to say? Pray through that. Have a little purpose behind what you're speaking of, because know why you're saying what you're saying. That's the start. I think it's gonna, because I know from our time together, and I know from the show, and I know from the book, as soon as it hits, and everything starts flooding in on you. Mm-hmm. It's almost impossible to keep your own thoughts together sometimes, because there's so much data, so much information, so many opinions, so many conversations that you're trying to process, and you need accountability, like you two were for me, and my friends are for me in my life, to bounce those thoughts off of. Hey, I disagree with what was said today. Help me understand where that person was coming from, and also help me understand where I'm coming from, so I can collectively get a thought out there. Because I don't care how smart you are, it's really hard to do. Yeah. So that's my first step in all of this, is get that together. The second is listen. There's a unique skill set to to listening, and I put listening and curiosity together. Listen to what the other person is saying. Be curious about what the other person is saying. Ask questions. Try to understand. I think the best people in leadership today are ones that understand the opinions of all, and can speak to why they believe what they believe and how strongly they believe it. So listen and have a curiosity there. So when the media does start to come down on you, you're not stuck in this spiral of, I don't know what to say next, but you're in a place of, I understand where you're coming from. I understand what you're trying to say, and here's why I believe what I believe.
Yeah. I just to that, I think it's really great, this idea of taking on being curious. I think being curious about what might be asked of you. So in some of the prep and prayer and praying for what might come down, so really getting that, but also being curious of what others might, what some of the, what other things you might get outside of the media, like in the role of being a political leader in particular. Like if you're curious about others, you're curious about what's going on out there, that really makes a difference.
Definitely. I really think it does. And I just think it makes you, I think you're going to find that your skill set, I think that's your differentiator. I think your differentiator in leadership is it's going to set you above and beyond, because you're always going to stay curious. I think that's a big deal. Transparency and authenticity has been one that we've already talked about. I think that takes a lot of inner work. The final one that I would say is just a good tip, less of kind of a concept, but more of a good tip, is to be concise in your communication. You almost have to speak to bullet points. You might get an interview for 5 minutes, and in that 5 minutes, you could be asked about 3 massive topics that there's no way you can explain them in 5 minutes. You can explain one of them in 5 minutes. So work with your team, work with yourself on getting some bullet points together and some taglines together that are related to what you really want to say and what you really want to communicate. I think concise communication is a really good skill set, and a PR skill set that takes a lot of work, but is helpful, especially when the media comes.
So I assume when you become the Bachelor, they have a whole PR team, people who come in and start supporting you in that role, or do they not? I have no idea. Is there, or do they just throw you to the sharks? And
they have them. There's some great people. I don't know how. I think I had to learn a lot as I went. Because once you're not the Bachelor, I don't know. I mean, I think they care, but it's kind of old news. And so if you set flames, to yourself, I don't know how quickly they're going to become running to back you, or how much it impacts the show. Yeah. So you kind of have to keep yourself accountable.
So during so when it's actually being filmed, nobody knows, of course, that they don't know really what's going to happen in the show and all that, but they don't have any PR people who do any media training or anything like that with you?
I think we went through a 2-hour media training. Where somebody jumps on a phone and they just bombard you with really tough questions, and they just continue to bombard you. And when you have an answer, they literally go to the worst assumed place that you thought they think that answer is from, and they keep asking you. I actually found it a super helpful thing. Yeah. Get somebody that you trust, that loves you, that you trust, and have them bombard you and be really hard on you. Because it doesn't feel good, but it makes you have to respond. Also, what it teaches you I still think this is helpful, is it teaches you at some point in time to go, I don't know. Let me do some research on that, which is a really fair question that never creates a story.
Yeah.
Give me some time to research on that and I'll get back to you, and then actually get back to him on it if it's through an email or a text or whatever. But just taking a step back when you're like, I don't have an answer here, taking a deep breath and going, I don't know, let me get back to you. That's never a story that's created.
Yeah, that's a gem, by the way, for the audience. Anybody who's thinking about running for office, is to get a friend, like you just said. That's excellent. We call it a murder board.
Yep.
We usually have a few people who will pelt you with tough questions and always assume the worst of what the answer, and even try to twist your words as much as they can.
Yep.
And one thing that I got, so this, you must have been just being around the camera so much, and then probably that experience, and it doesn't have to be a lot that you do it, you were always comfortable around the camera. Now, I saw it as being comfortable around the camera. Now, you may internally have not been comfortable around the camera. I mean, you can tell us if that's the case. It was just you did a good job of being in front of the camera. But is it just being around it so often? I'm not sure if I'm being clear, but...
You are. Yeah, I mean, I think when you kiss somebody on national television, it's hard to have too much embarrassment anymore around the camera. I think you get used to it over time. It doesn't take long. You kind of get in the rhythm of it. There were moments, and I think there were moments that I wasn't comfortable, but I think those would have been moments that I would have been comfortable if cameras are around me or not. I think they're just uncomfortable moments in life where I maybe didn't have an answer, or I felt like I was pushed against the wall. Or into a corner, and I didn't know a way out. Those are just uncomfortable moments in life. So I think those shine. But I do think being around a camera for long enough does help just you do it well, because you've kind of given up the embarrassment of it all.
Yeah. Well, there's a certain humility that I've seen with you, and also other candidates we've worked with. And that really works well. What you got to, that if you don't know the answer to something, there's nothing wrong with that. Like you don't have to make something up. So what I witnessed when you were around the camera, when you were being interviewed, is a comfort level and maybe a lack of significance in it, that you weren't making it like the most important thing that you're ever doing. For a lot of the candidates, they don't have a lot of experience with this. They make one TV interview into like it's the biggest thing that's ever happened. And if they get asked a question they don't know the answer to, they get the deer in the headlights look. And it's really like they don't know what to do next. And for you, if you got a question you didn't understand, or they didn't really know the answer to, you were comfortable with it, and it wasn't a big deal. And what you said, you didn't make a story. It's really a pretty amazing skill set to have.
Yeah, there's a unique there's a book about it, but when you do get that, there's going to be a couple interviews that people do. Right, last week I was on Good Morning America, and I was thinking about 2 years ago when I was on Good Morning America, my palms were sweating and I was so nervous. And this time I woke up and I threw a shirt on, showered, sat down, did the interview, walked out. I was like, that was weird. That felt very anticlimactic.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things is we realize is, and this might not feel good, you're important. Everybody is. But this interview is a lot less important than you're internally making it. It's the biggest thing to you. It's probably not the biggest thing to the interviewer. And it's definitely not the biggest thing to the viewer. It's going to be important to those who watch. People want to hear what you have to say, especially when it comes to who they're going to vote for and what you believe in. But you don't suffocate yourself with the burden that is each interview. Just don't do it. Take 10 seconds and just breathe, knowing that you're there for a reason, that if you keep your head on straight, that if you can stay as relaxed as possible, this is all going to be okay. Because again, you're there for a reason. You're there for the skills that you've been brought into this, or who you are as a person. When you start to make this thing the Super Bowl, when you start to make this thing the most important thing in your life, it's going to crush you, because you're going to get nervous. You're going to lose your trains of thought. And it's never helpful. So just rest, relax. It's going to be fine.
By the way, I have a feeling that Tom Brady doesn't even make the Super Bowl a Super Bowl at this point.
No,
number 10
the night before. I mean, that's when you know you're okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and that really is great advice because it is the way that you're going to actually be, your authentic self.
Yeah.
Is without adding all this meaning and everything else to it. And so I really want to. That is really helpful for our listeners out there. So want to make special note of that.
Yeah, that the significance cuts you off from the audience. You're not able to be present with the audience or present with the interviewer. It has you in your head ultimately.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and so that's my best advice would just be, you're there for a reason. It's the same thing I tell anybody that's stepping into the spotlight. You're there for a reason. You're chosen for a reason. And you're going to do your best to stay authentic to yourself through the process. So I get it though. And you do it with your board where you slam people with questions. I think that's helpful. I think getting people around a camera, any of the practice that you can do for that is super, super helpful. Because it can become second nature in a sense, and you become prepared for it.
Excellent. Well, I have a couple last questions, and then I want to get through. We might do like a rapid through some of the questions we've gotten from the audience. So, any last advice you'd have for anybody who's stepping into the public spotlight, anybody who's putting themselves out there that you learned over the last, I guess it's been 6 years or so that you've been in the spotlight, all the skill sets you've learned. Also from Generous Coffee, you've been the leader of a business, and you have been a leader of nonprofit activities. And then also through writing the book, any things that you want to just make sure are out there in the bloodstream of the American public that they know that you've learned in this whole process that you think they could take with them that would be of value?
Yeah, when you say that, when you ask that, the first thing that comes to mind is never forget why you're doing it. I know, and all those things that you just mentioned in my life, again, there's moments where it feels really great to be known, really great to be talked about, really great to be celebrated. But that's not why I'm doing it. And those moments are unfulfilling. Those moments don't match half as much as when I started this whole thing in every sphere. And when I say, why am I doing what I'm doing? It's again to be a part of people's stories and to try my best to fight injustice that's facing humans around the world, because I've been given the opportunity and I've seen it with my own eyes that there is injustice around the world. And I want to try to go after that. I want to try to alleviate that so people can be the best versions of themselves. That's my mission. That's my plan. Anything that strays away from that, I'm unprepared for. And I start to become unauthentic and I start to become a lesser version of myself. So to summarize that, I would just say, never forget why you're doing it in any pursuit of life. The next thing would be to always understand that you do have a value, that you do have a purpose, that you are a human that has breath and life. That is a miracle in itself. And so use that responsibility wisely, but also know that, yes, there's going to be seasons of, especially when you put yourself out there, of heaviness and darkness and aloneness. And within those moments, never forget that you're not alone in that. It's why this book was written. I felt that way. Many others have felt that way. In fact, if you sit down for coffee or lunch with somebody and you say, have you ever felt alone? Especially people that are probably pursuing the same career path or the same personal path that you are, they're going to say, yes, I have. I can almost guarantee it. I've never met somebody that hasn't. And so just never forget that you're not alone, that you have purpose and value, and never stray from why you're doing what you're doing.
I love it. All right, we're going to do a lightning round.
Yeah.
I guess we'll run through. People are very interested in what you're talking about. So
So we're going to start, Ben, had you watched The Bachelor before it went on?
Yes, I did. Multiple seasons. My mom was a fan. Some friends in college were fans. I wasn't like a stronghold fan, like where I loved the show so much, but I enjoyed it. And so, yes, I knew all about it, and I'd seen seasons start to finish before I went on.
Cool. Well, that's great. And then now, does your significant other, Jessica, right, now share the same philanthropic lifestyle as you? Does she share your passion to help others?
Oh, I mean, one of the best things about her and what attracted me the most to her was before I met her, that was something she cared about. And so it just makes our relationship really fun because we get to now do it together. We get to be partners in this. So yes and yes.
Awesome.
That's great. And then and to follow up on that, how is there one thing that stands out that you regret from the show?
I learned a lot from doing the show. I think the only regret I have is at the very end of the show, the big storyline was that I told two people I loved them. That was the big thing for my season. And I said it out of, I believe, still good intention. I thought I needed to be authentic in how I felt about them, and I thought that would help. In fact, I think it could be viewed as a little bit manipulating, and it was a little bit leading on. I think one of the things I learned from there is to be wise in my communication. I probably didn't. It's been years, but I didn't really pray through that, think through it. Like, what are the repercussions of me saying this? Is this going to be helpful or not? Is it going to be hurtful or helpful is oftentimes how I process what I'm going to say. And so that was probably a hurtful communication because it led somebody astray.
Yeah, I really got that. And thanks for sharing that. And then how has your charity work enriched your life?
Oh, in every way possible. I mean, I think it's given me a perspective. It's kept me really grateful and thankful for the fact that I have clean water. But I also don't now, I'm unable to neglect that thought by, yes, I'm thankful for that, but other people aren't. So it's enriched my life because it's added complexity and a depth to life that I wouldn't have had without it. And I think also, again, to go back on it, and I've said it many times, but it's allowed me to have a seat at the table with a lot of people's really great stories. Stories of triumph, stories of pain, stories of discomfort. Being a part of that work allows me to have a seat at their table, and that makes life very, very fulfilling.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's even a part of, back to the question we had a little while ago, but it's even a part of your, your relationship now, which is I can just imagine the fulfillment across the board there.
Yeah. Definitely. By the way, our experience when we were looking at putting the campaign together, when we were putting together that TV show, it was really clear at that moment that the work that you had done with the organization you had the bracelet for, that you had worn on the show, that it was actually, as an idea, it's actually enriched our lives as well, because the way you had approached the nonprofit in helping these communities, thinking about education, healthcare, community, like having a place for people to come together, jobs, just the approach of that organization really is a lot of the levers, I guess you could pull, and the ways you could actually impact a community. And so for us, we've actually taken that into a lot of our work when we think about how to affect policies across the country and working with our candidates. So even there, your charitable work has enriched our lives and our political practice. So we thank you for that.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that. And then the last question we have up here is, will you run for office again?
It's an interesting question, one that I get asked often. One thing that is happening right now, and we all knew this when we worked together, is it's a different political sphere than when I entered in 4 years ago. I'm not great at yelling, and I'm not great in those contentious moments. And that wasn't going to be my pursuit when I went into office. That wasn't why I was doing it. And so the political landscape does need to change a bit for me to feel like an effective candidate. I don't feel like I could be an effective candidate today. I'm processing a lot right now when it comes to what I think is right. And just like I said, this is an interesting point. Just like I said, when it comes to the nonprofit, when it comes to politics, the pursuit for me has to stay the same, which is what do I believe is best for the people around me, for the people that I would be representing. Why am I doing this? And right now, I don't have a clear answer to that. when it comes to politics. And that's just a place that I have to get honest within and say, as a result, I don't think I could be a good candidate today. Now, in 5 years, in 6 years, could that become clearer to me? Hopefully, maybe. And then, yes, I would say 100% it's a possibility. Right now, I'm in the place of learning, of searching, of processing, of trying to figure it all out, which isn't a bad place to be.
Yeah.
But right now, it wouldn't be the place that I would say, okay, now I'm ready to run. I'm not there right now.
Well, it's a place of discovery, and if you're looking for what could be there, the purpose of our program is we are out to empower citizens to be informed citizens, to be able to do their duty as a citizen, but also to be political leaders. And our belief, it's a fundamental belief, is that you don't have to be elected to office to be a political leader. That as an American citizen, you get to be a political leader, whether it's in your community, just speaking up on issues, if it's having a conversation like we're having right now, where we're empowering people who may be running for office and providing them with some of the skill sets that you've learned. Like, you're actually being a political leader by doing that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that you run for office to be able to do that, to impact the national conversation, to provide something of value that does empower people. So in my book, you're actually taking on what there is to do right now. And I get it. And maybe in the future, maybe not in the future, but you'll see what's there. And this is a really nice comment that we got here at the end. Isn't it amazing how God launched us through the most least expected venue, or launched you through the least expected venue? You've been faithful, been with much, and made it greater. You've been given much, and you've made it greater. So
Thank you.
that's a very kind comment. And well, thank you very much for spending some time with us and for sharing what you have to offer with the world, and for the new book. I recommend people do go check that out. This is something I always ask in interviews: where can you find books? Like, people don't know where bookstores are or the internet, but but I do assume it's on Amazon and everywhere else that you can buy books.
Yeah, I did the Audible version. I read through that. One of the hardest things I've ever done, by the way.
Yeah.
Without messing up for so many chapters and still adding emphasis in it. So I did the Audible version myself. It's on Audible. It's on Amazon. It's at your local bookstores. I always like to say, go and support your local bookstores if you can. I think that's a big deal right now. And but if that's not the avenue, then I do still want to say, go buy it on Amazon or Goodreads or wherever you
buy it anywhere you can buy it, but buy it at the local bookstore if you can. I did get the Audible version, so it's kind of cool. It's you doing it.
Yeah.
At least what I've listened to, so that's really cool. And and then what else if you want people? So Generous Coffee, can people anywhere across the country get access to all of your products?
Yeah, generouscoffee.com. Go and just visit it, check it out. We do have specialty grade coffee, so by scientific measures, it's the best coffee you can buy. So it's good coffee, and it gives back. So that would be huge if people went out and bought that. That'd mean a lot to many people. That's the best way. You can find me on Instagram at higgins.ben or Twitter at benhiggy. So I think those right now are the main avenues. I mean, I'd love to say that we have a bunch of Bachelor fans on here, but I'd be surprised. But we do have the Almost Famous podcast with iHeartRadio that I've been doing for years. And but right now it's the coffee and the book that I'm really, trying to get out there.
Well, I will tell you, when we started the process of developing the show and having you run for office several years ago, we found out that there were a lot of Republican political strategists who were huge fans of the show. So I would say that our audience is probably pretty big fans of the show. And it's an interesting crossover. And we learned a little bit about the demographics at the time. Yeah. So there's quite a few folks who are fans and also appreciate the nonprofit work and your ministry, what you're doing as well. Awesome. We have a lot of people of faith on this program as well. So they're all, guys, I'm sure, very interested.
Yep. Yeah. Ben, really appreciate it. And to remind folks, the name of the book is Alone in Plain Sight. And it's available anywhere. There it is.
All right. Pretty awesome.
And the Audible version, you did a great job of the part I've listened to so far of really inflection. And so you're just talking about that.
One more thing that candidates need to work on in all of
Yeah,
this. I mean, I try to do it myself.
Yeah,
Work on my inflection.
it's not easy. I'm telling you this. But hey, thank you all. I appreciate it.
All right. All the best to you, Ben. And thank you so much. And now on with the show. Well, that was a lot of fun having an old friend on the show and to talk through all these different topics and getting people's questions. I know we had a lot of engagement today, so thank you to everybody who was paying attention. We have a couple of more comments. I would get the Audible version. Name it again, please. I think you did. Yep. Alone in Plain Sight by Ben Higgins. By the way, I didn't tell him this, but that's a great title. It's perfect for somebody who got their start in reality TV and had to deal with all these things. A great program. Thank you very much. And how can we get a signed copy of your book? That's a good question. Might be too late for that request. But Sean, what are some of your thoughts as we begin to wrap up the show?
Really appreciated. One of the things we talk about is really sharing yourself. What we tell our clients is really being able to share yourself with voters. I think he really got into being vulnerable, and he talked about it in this book, and it's another thing. And a lot of people don't think that's what's going to be involved with running for office, like actually putting yourself out there, as opposed, I think in some cases, and it used to be this way, that you got some persona of someone.
Yeah.
We talked about it, and you kind of saw it with some, elected leaders in the past or people who ran for office in the past, that you kind of saw like one version of them. You're like, well, this can't be real. And guess what? It wasn't.
You're talking about Mitt Romney.
Yes.
Well, for folks who are watching the show, there's been a big change in politics in the last 5 years. Some people aren't happy with everything that's happened in politics, but the truth of the matter is, at least for those of us on the Republican side, it used to be more of the Mitt Romney model, where Mitt in front of the camera is a completely different person than behind the camera. It's almost jarring how different it is. And then you have Donald Trump, who is basically the same person all the time and very authentic. From our work doing the convention and the inauguration and everything else, it's just the two different models. And it's really been clear that other people are starting to see that they can be comfortable in their own skin. Specifically, we think of Ted Cruz often. He's much more comfortable than he used to be.
And almost always, Americans will elect who they believe to be the most authentic.
Yeah.
It's, you can kind of go back through history. I mean, John Kerry, who, stood in Michigan and said, "For me, I go for Buckeyes football." And the crowd booed. And he goes, "Except for when I'm in Michigan." People are like, "What is So, but that's what happens when it's, you're kind of putting out a front, that's just not real. So that was one of the things I really got. You're going to get from the book, haven't gotten too far along in it, but what I've really gotten so far from that, and the interview, I thought it was really enlightening for folks. So really appreciate you being here for that.
Yeah, this is good. We think a lot of Ben when we worked on the show. Just to give a little bit of background, as I said, the producers called and they said, "We have this person. We're not going to tell you who it is, but they're really famous and they're on every single magazine when you go to the grocery store." And I'm like, I don't look at the magazines when I go to the grocery store, and the only thing I could think of is Peyton Manning that just won the Super Bowl. I'm like, well, maybe it's Peyton Manning, and he's thinking about running for office, and that's cool. But then we got introduced to the Bachelor Nation and everything else, and found out a lot of Republican consultants are huge fans of the whole thing, and it was really interesting. You saw some fanboys out there, some journalists in some cases, and some Republican representatives and whatnot who really wanted to be a part of all of it. It was quite fascinating. But watching the reality show process be put together, and seeing the way that Ben handled himself through that. Ultimately, the show didn't happen the way that it had been developed. There's a lot of stuff that happened behind the scenes we can't really talk about, but he handled it really well the whole way through. He honored his commitments, and he did everything that he could to make the process work well, which we are very, very grateful for that, and how he handled himself. So he handled himself with honor. I know there's a few people who have asked us about, is politics changed and all that. That's not what this show is about. We have people who are Republicans, Democrats, Independents on. I've interviewed a number of Democrats before, and the idea is to see how people can be effective as political leaders. How can people learn how to communicate? How can people be able to have their vision and actually have it become reality? And that's what we're interested in discovering here and learning from people from all different walks of life. We had a really excellent show that, Sean, you weren't able to be here for, but on Friday we had Beth Siebert come on, and we talked about what it is to be a citizen leader. So we have a lot of people that we can learn from and take those lessons, and each of us use those to take our leadership as citizens to the next level, which is what we are out to do. And if you are into that and you would really like to help share that, I really do request that you join the Share Force. So go to politicaltradesecrets.com and do share this program in particular today. Wherever you're watching it, share it to your audience. I think this is a way to get in front of more people, to empower them to be informed citizens, and to empower them as citizens to be political leaders, to help reignite American patriotism. One of the things I really got from Ben is looking for that common ground, looking for that connection. And one thing that we have in America that we need to remind ourselves of is, instead of this identity politics where we divide each other by all the different groups we could possibly be in, we are all citizens of an amazing and great country, the greatest the world's ever known. And we can always have that in common. And we can always come back to that. So being American is what we all have, and to really stand there and have that connection with people, I think is something that I know I'm committed to. It's sometimes hard, I get it, but Sean, what are your thoughts?
Well, absolutely. I think the really being in having that outlook where you can make a difference, whatever it looks like, is really what we're committed to here. And so we appreciate everybody joining with us today. And there's a lot of different ways where you can put that to use. Dustin, you want to share one of them?
Yeah. Sign up to be a Political Trade Secrets Insider, get exclusive stuff. And we're going to be having more programs, online courses, using these insights from people like Ben and others for how you can be an effective communicator and whatnot. We're going to have those at politicaltradesecrets.com. But go there, sign up to be an insider, make sure that we have your contact information if everything gets shut down at some point. We're still waiting for Parler to come back on. Like, who knows? And you never know. You can't rely on one service is going to exist forever. So, we are committed to the purpose of reigniting American patriotism. So whatever services we need to use, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, you name it, we're going to be there. And if they stop working, then we'll go to the next place. But go to politicaltradesecrets.com, sign up to be a Political Trade Secrets Insider, get exclusive stuff. With that, Sean, if you'd like to remind people of our sponsors.
Look, are you thinking about running for office, or really how to be a powerful political leader, whatever it looks like? We even got to give you a great example of it today, and how different that can look. We'd love to have that conversation with you. It's olsonstrategies.com, OLSON strategies.com. You want to set up a conversation, email me directly, Sean, SEAN, at olsonstrategies.com, or Dustin at olsonstrategies.com, and let's have that conversation. We are also proud to be sponsored by Grassfire. What do? It's canvassing, petitioning, live calling, on your doors, on the doorstep, in front of the grocery store, or over the phone. It's www.grassfire.us. What they do, they are better than anybody in the business at really delivering the communication the way that'll represent your campaign best. And that's what they do. And then they fuel 10centtexting.com. This is your way to connect with voters right where they are on their mobile device. Image, video, GIF, right there in the body of the text message. So reach out to 10 Cent Texting today to see how you can best stay in contact with your voters, your constituents, and really be able to make that impact immediately.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And as a reminder, so people ask us how they can get active. Right now, if you are looking to look at the candidates, look at the board. You can go to winred.com. There's a whole map of the United States. You can look at the different states and what races are at play, and you can be a part of supporting folks who are out to empower individuals. And that is something. This has all the Republican candidates running across the country. You can learn more about that at winred.com. It's an organization, a party that's always been there at the expansion of what it is to be a human being over the last 180 years, from ending slavery to women's suffrage to civil rights to, at this point in time, the right to life and the freedom to think, freedom of religion, freedom of thought and speech and assembly. Like this is the place to be if that is what matters to you. So, Sean, thank you very much for a great show. I think tomorrow we're going to come back. As you know, as we've been speaking, there's been an unconstitutional trial going on as we've been speaking. So, the Senate thinks they can try private citizens. We'll probably talk about that tomorrow and see what's happened. We're going to talk about this Times article this week that was pretty remarkable. They basically admitted to, as they say, fortifying the election, which is fascinating. So we will talk about that. We were going to talk about it on Monday, but it's just it's a heavy article and it's a lot of stuff. There's a lot going on and a lot of people admitting stuff. I think they want credit for having had the impact that they did. And it's, for half the country, they're not gonna like it.
We talked about in a lot of past articles, right? When you built this up that you're stopping, Orange Hitler, of course you want credit for it, Yes. It's not all inglorious bastards out there, Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that's I think there's definitely some of that going on.
Mm-hmm. And they don't get for the other half of the country that's not maybe necessarily in TDS that it just looks a little bit crazy.
Yeah,
honestly. Well, thank you very much. It's been a really empowering episode. It's been a very positive episode. Tomorrow we'll talk about some of the stuff that's happening in the news. Not that there's really that much happening in the news, honestly, these days.
No, you could have watched what's going on today. December 2019, if you wanted.
Exactly. So. Yeah, it's Groundhog Day. Last week was Groundhog Day, and Mayor de Blasio, of course, killed the groundhog. I don't know if you saw that. You may have missed that last week. He dropped the groundhog, and I don't know what happens. Does winter continue, or is it worse, or is it better?
Well, evidently,
if the mayor kills the groundhog,
evidently it continues indefinitely, at least according to my window.
Yes. Some people say it's going to be a long, dark winter. So maybe that's the outlook. Well, enough of that. Yep. Thank you, everybody, for joining the show. It's really been fun. And with that, this has been another episode of Political Trade Secrets.
Join us next time by subscribing on iTunes and get show notes and sign up for our newsletter at politicaltradesecrets.com.